And then, ma'am, if you'd remain standing, raise your right hand. Do you swear that everything you're going to testify to today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you. You may be seated. And then state your full name and spell your last name.
Nicole Whitaker. My last name is Whiteaker.
No, we're missing, excuse me a moment. We're missing sheets. What I've done is I've copied the petition and marked it as Court Exhibit 1.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to give you now what's marked as Court Exhibit 1.
Thank you.
And then I'll turn over to Attorney Nicolai.
Thank you, Judge. Ms. Whitaker, where do you work?
I work for Wisconsin Community Services.
And what do you do there?
I am the Conditional Release Program Supervisor.
What does that mean? What are your duties?
I oversee a team of people who are overseeing participants who are released into the community under conditional release.
Did you become involved in preparing a plan for Morgan Geyser in this case?
I did.
And did you begin to prepare that plan in this case?
I did.
Ultimately, did you write a memorandum with some information in it that was filed with the court?
I did.
And you've been handed Court's Exhibit Number 1, is that true?
Yes.
Is that a multi-page document?
Yes.
What's the date of filing on that document, please?
February 27th, 2025.
Okay. And do you recognize that document?
I do.
What is it?
This is the 5177 petition for revocation.
Is there information in that petition that you generated?
There is.
What information is that?
I generated a portion of this that are numbered, and that comes out of case notes that were done after meetings with Ms. Geyser.
Could you refer the court to a page number where your content begins?
Mine is not numbered, but I'm on the 4th page.
Okay. Is there a WCS logo at the top left corner of that page?
There is.
Okay. On the final page of that exhibit, is your electronic signature there?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you compile the information in this memo?
We, as a treatment team,
I'm going to object to her testifying as a treatment team when she's asked what she was tasked with.
Sustained.
Yeah.
Sustain the objection. Can we go ahead?
Sure. I want to back up a little bit. Did you meet Morgan Geyser when you were assigned to this case?
I met her previously to being assigned to this case.
Okay, and specifically to planning the conditional release plan, did you meet with a team that was tasked with creating that plan?
I did.
Who was a part of that team?
There are several members of the team that include myself, a case manager, our partners at DHS, and members of the Winnebago Mental Health Institute treatment team.
And when you say DHS, are you talking about the Department of Health Services?
I am.
And would that include Erin Graff?
It would.
For the record, is that GRAF?
Yes.
And is her signature actually also on Exhibit 1 that you were given by the court?
It is.
And what part did she play in this filing, if you know?
She filed the 5177.
And she's an employee with the Department of Health Services, is that true?
She is.
Okay. But was she also a part of the team that was helping to prepare this conditional release plan?
Yes.
Okay. And how many meetings do you think that this group had in regard to the conditional release plan in this case?
Initially, the treatment team meets as a whole in the beginning, when a participant's granted conditional release, and then a smaller group meets with the participant on a weekly basis going forward until she's released.
When the group became smaller, what participants were left in it?
Myself, my case manager, the participant, and sometimes her social worker at Winnebago.
Was the social worker always in those meetings in this case?
Not always.
Why not?
There were times that Morgan had asked her to leave.
Was that social worker someone that was recently brought into Morgan's team?
Yes.
Okay. At some point in time during these planning meetings, did reading material become a topic?
It did.
And why would it be important for you, in preparing a conditional release plan, to know about a participant's reading material?
In the beginning of preparing a conditional release plan, it's really important for us as a team to build rapport and get to know the participant, coping skills, things of that nature. And the purpose of the conditional release plan is to mitigate risk to the community. When we started looking into things that Ms. Geyser liked to do, reading became a topic. To then we inquired about what types of books and things like that.
Okay. At a point in time, did you become concerned about information you learned about reading material that Ms. Geyser was using?
I did.
Why?
Because it is related to the index offense, I suppose.
In what way?
It's violent.
Specifically, is one of the books that you're referencing called Rent Boy?
Objection leading.
Overruled. It is leading, but we all are familiar with these various documents, and this will move the hearing along, so overruled.
Yes.
And did you have concerns about the fact that Ms. Geyser had read that book?
I did.
Why?
Because it was a dark novel that revolved around murder and the selling of body parts on the black market, along with sexual sadism.
Is that information contained in the material that you put together in Exhibit 1?
It is.
Okay. How did Ms. Geyser react when she was informed the treatment team and conditional release team would be monitoring her reading material?
She was upset.
Did she say why?
She didn't feel it was necessary for the team to oversee things that she used as coping skills and a creative outlet.
Do you consider it an important part of a treatment plan, a conditional release plan, to monitor things like reading material and media usage?
Yes, that's a standard thing that we do as a conditional release team, and it's very individualized to each participant as well as their index offense.
Was that fact relayed to Ms. Geyser?
Yes.
And was she receptive to that?
No, she still thought that it was unnecessary.
Did you talk about monitoring Ms. Geyser's reading material during more than one meeting with her?
We did.
Did her response to that monitoring ever change?
No.
Would it be fair to say she pushed back on that monitoring?
Yes.
Did she ever come around and acknowledge that that would be an appropriate thing for the team to do?
No.
Was that concerning to the conditional release team?
It was.
Why?
Because it shows risk, and the conditional release plan cannot, or the conditional release team, I'm sorry, cannot write a conditional release plan when we aren't aware of the risk to the community.
Was there a point in time when you approached Aaron Graff and Kathleen Martinez with the Department of Health Services about preparing this plan?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Because things were coming to light that the treatment team wasn't aware of, and I needed to pass that on to other people as she's being released into the community. I can't be the only one harboring that information. The team needs to be aware.
How did you know that the treatment team wasn't aware of these things?
Well, initially I brought it to Aaron and Katie, and they then looked deeper into things with Winnebago.
So that was that discussion and comparing information with Winnebago was not a role that you took on personally?
Correct.
Okay. Are you aware of an individual named Jeffrey Pagel?
I am aware of him, yes.
When you are creating a conditional release plan, is it important for you to know people who a participant is having contact with outside of an institution?
It is.
Why?
There are a number of reasons, risk being the number one. We have to take in the participants' treatment needs, as they're in the community. And so I asked Ms. Geyser, who are the people that she's communicating with on the outside, and that his name came up.
How recently had she had communication with him?
I'm not sure the answer to that. I know that she stated he did send her a letter after she was granted conditional release, and she stated that she ripped it up and threw it away.
So at the point in time when you discussed this individual with Ms. Geyser, did it seem that she wanted contact with him?
No.
Okay. Is there information nonetheless about this person in the memo in Exhibit 1 that you wrote?
Yes.
Why? What is included in here and why?
After the team became aware of him, it was during that meeting that Ms. Geyser asked for a no contact. We further looked into things to find out if there was such a need for a no contact and what was the reason. And we found a number of things on his Facebook that pertained to Ms. Geyser that we were concerned about.
And before I forget, I apologize for jumping topics here, Ms. Whitaker. I want to ask you one more question about the book Rent Boy that we talked about.
Okay.
Were you able to ascertain how Ms. Geyser got the book to read in Winnebago?
I was under the understanding that she had got it from the library, but then it later came out that it was sent to her
How?
via mail from somebody, I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, going back to, you indicated that there were things, did you do research on this individual on the internet, or how did you know these concerning things about this individual, JP?
I did not personally do the research. My lead case manager did, as well as the social worker at Winnebago Mental Health.
And what was anything that was found significant to your assessment of Ms. Geyser's risk to the community or herself?
I'm going to object to that. She didn't do any research on Jeffrey Pagel.
Overruled, witness can answer.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Was there any information about this individual, JP, that was relevant to your assessment of Ms. Geyser's risk to herself or the community?
Yes, but it was also concerning for Miss Geyser. And when we talk about risk to the community, she is included in that assessment, and he had things directly relating to her on his Facebook page, so yes, that was concerning.
What types of things relating to Ms. Geyser was on his social media accounts?
I'm going to object on relevance grounds. And I'm happy to make further argument.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think it's relative and probative to the issues that have been raised by the petition to revoke the conditional release, from the standpoint that information the person, Mr. Pagels, may have on his Facebook account could be from any place, but it may also involve information that purportedly may have come from Ms. Geyser. I don't know that, but I wanted to be able to hear that, and that should be part of the record. So I'll overrule the objection.
We found that there were letters and drawings that she had sent him, a postcard, and he was selling them. He was selling the items.
Were you able to see the drawings that he was purporting were from Ms. Geyser?
Yes,
Were they concerning to you?
yes.
Why?
They were very dark in nature. I would describe it as a horror type picture.
Excuse me?
Horror.
All right.
I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you recognize that?
I do.
What is it?
It is a drawing that Morgan has done
Where did you get it?
off of Jeffrey Pagel's Facebook page.
Was that one of the items for sale?
Yes.
How was it being was Ms. Geyser's name linked to that piece of art in the sale information?
It was.
Does that look like a fair and accurate copy of the item that you found for sale in this case?
It does.
I'd move Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objections?
No.
Received.
And Judge, I can either display it digitally or just have the witness hand you the paper copy of it.
You can display it digitally.
Ms. Whitaker, is the Exhibit 1 on the screen in front of you the same as the paper copy that I handed you?
It is.
Okay. And remind the court again what this is?
That's a drawing that came off of Jeffrey Pagel's Facebook page. He compiled a number of items that he was selling as, he called it the Slender Man package.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Were you able to ascertain how long Ms. Geyser had been a willful participant in communicating with that individual, JP?
I do not have knowledge on how long the relationship lasted or how long they communicated.
Okay. At a point in time, did you learn any information about JP that was concerning as it related to sexual behavior?
Yes.
And what was that?
In speaking, we were very open about this topic with Ms. Geyser during the meetings, you know, as it's a great risk as she comes into the community, and she was aware, and she recalled that he would get sexual gratification from her index offense, and I believe that there were letters written back and forth.
Is that information something that Ms. Geyser told you during a meeting?
She did tell us that, yes.
Okay. Is that, as far as you're aware, is that information something that she had worked on in therapy or with her treatment team to that point?
I was not sure.
Okay. Was that concerning that you didn't know the answer to that?
Yes,
Why?
because it tells me that there's an unknown risk.
When you first, strike that. The Exhibit 1, you testified that the bulk of the information you included is bulleted with numbers, is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So would it be correct that in terms of creating the conditional release plan in this case, one of your first meetings with Ms. Geyser would have been on or about January 17th of this year?
That's correct.
Okay. During that initial meeting, did you learn what Ms. Geyser's preferred pronouns were
I
at
did.
that time?
I did.
How did you learn that information?
At the beginning of the meeting, my greeting or opening statement was, "Hi Ethan, how are you?" And she had responded, "JK, I'm going by Morgan, she, her pronouns."
What was Ms. Geyser's demeanor like when she said JK to you?
Very light, aloof, just very casual.
Why did you greet Ms. Geyser as Ethan?
Because I had previous knowledge that she was now identifying as Ethan using him, her pronouns. He, him pronouns, I'm sorry.
In terms of Exhibit 1, the conclusion section and recommendation section, is that something that you authored?
I did not.
Okay, who authored those pieces, if you know?
Katie Martinez from DHS.
Okay. And in terms of the decision to actually file this material as a petition to revoke conditional release, was that a decision that you made on your own?
It was not.
Was it even your decision at all?
No.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination.
Do we have a hard copy of Exhibit 1?
She has it.
That's the February report. You have Exhibit 1 in front of you, ma'am?
I do.
Yeah, yes, she does.
Okay, can I go?
Sure.
Can I see that, please?
Sure.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This report you just testified to is dated, what date?
February 27th, 2025.
Can I mark Exhibit 2 here on this week?
Now, are you marking the one that came in on March 4th?
Yes.
I have it already marked as Exhibit 2.
Perfect, can I use that?
Sure.
So what you just testified to is an exhibit from February 27th. I'm showing you Exhibit 2. What's the date on that report?
March 4th, 2025.
The reason there was a second report is because the first report that you authored contained inaccuracies, correct?
Correct.
In other words, you made mistakes.
Not me. It was Winnebago had not given accurate information to DHS.
So inaccurate information was provided to DHS from Winnebago.
Yes.
Then DHS provided that inaccurate information to the court.
Through the filing, yes, that's why we amended.
Okay, well, we're going to make sure we have accurate information today, okay?
Perfect.
So the March 4th report, Exhibit 2, in front of you has certain things that are crossed out, right?
It does.
And just so I'm clear, ma'am, I only want to ask you questions about things you have personal knowledge of that you did. I don't want to get into what other people did, okay?
I just want to note for the record that Exhibits 1 and 2 are actually Court Exhibit 1, Court Exhibit 2. You may
Very good.
continue.
Yes. So just so we're clear, when things are crossed out in Exhibit 2, it's because that was inaccurate information and you're trying to correct it for the record, right?
Yes, but I did not make those corrections.
Okay, so points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, are those, did you type those line items?
I did,
But in terms of making the corrections, some other person did that.
right.
Okay, so as I understand it, your job is, well, I don't know that we got into this. What is your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice.
Okay? What else?
As far as my education, I have ongoing mental health education through, employment. I've been working in the mental health field over 17 years.
Okay, so you have a bachelor's degree.
I do.
You are not a doctor,
I am not.
not a psychologist,
Nope.
not a psychiatrist.
No,
You're not holding yourself out that way at all, I'm assuming, right?
absolutely not.
Okay. You would agree that, strike that. You are in charge of the you are a WCS conditional release supervisor, right?
Yes,
And so would I be on solid footing if I said that part of your job is to manage the team that will oversee the conditional release?
yes.
For Morgan specifically, as part of this process, did you yourself ever speak to any of the 3 doctors who did the reports in this case?
I had not.
Okay, you've never called Dr. Lundbaum,
No,
you've never called Dr. Collins,
no,
and you've never called Dr. Robbins.
no.
Have you, as you sit here today, have you even read their reports?
Yes.
Okay, which ones?
I don't have the dates memorized. There were a number of reports. I can't give you specifics.
Okay, well, there are 3, you are aware that there are 3 doctors who have authored reports that have gone to the court in support of Ms. Geyser's release.
Yes.
And it's your testimony that you have read, you're not sure if you've read all of them or you have read all of them.
No, I had at one time. I have not read them recently.
Okay, well, I wasn't asking about dates, but you're sure you read all 3 reports, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did you read those reports before you authored or before you put together the petition to revoke Ms. Geyser's release?
I didn't put together the petition to revoke.
Or before you typed the WCS letter?
Can you rephrase the question, or can you restate the question? I'm sorry.
Did you read those 3 doctor reports before you put together the letter that
Yes.
you authored?
Yes.
Okay. So as I understand it, you've met with Ms. Geyser on a few occasions. How many times?
I'm not sure the number of times off the top of my head.
Okay, is it more than 5 or less than 5?
More than 5.
So you drive up to Winnebago and do meetings there at Winnebago.
We do Zoom meetings.
Have you ever met her in person?
I have.
How many times?
About 5, maybe?
So you've done Zoom meetings and you've also driven up to Winnebago to meet her in person, right?
I have, but that was different conditions, yes.
What does that mean, different conditions?
We do what's called community success groups, that we go up to Winnebago and do education. So that's when, I've met Ms. Geyser.
Okay, so you're talking before
Yes.
before conditional release was
Yes.
granted. So since conditional release was granted, were those meetings those were Zoom meetings then?
Yes.
Okay, but the other occasions in the past, you met her face to face?
Yes.
And to be clear, I think the last question Ms. Nicolai asked you was about the petition to revoke. That's not your doing, the petition to revoke.
Correct.
What you've authored is a WCS letter that's attached to that to provide information for the court, as I understand it.
A portion of the letter.
Not even the whole thing.
Right.
Now, you said that it's important to build rapport with a person who's going to be released, right?
Absolutely.
And because you're going to be involved in Ms. Geyser's life going forward on a practical level. If she's released, you're going to be involved in her life, right?
Yes, her case manager would be more so, but yes.
But just so it's clear, WCS as an agency provides support in the community for people who are on conditional release, right?
It does.
So rapport is sort of a two-way street. It's important for you to have a positive rapport towards her and her to have a positive rapport towards you.
Yes,
And you're aware, I mean, you've been to Winnebago before, so you're aware of what the facility is like, right?
Is that a yes or a no?
yes,
Thank you.
It is a secure facility, if you will, is it not?
yes,
And I know we call it a mental health institute, but there's security and guards and rules at an institution like that, aren't there?
yes,
And in order for somebody to get a visit at Winnebago, whoever's in Winnebago, they're just sort of there, and another person in the community can request to come visit that person. Is that how it works?
I do not know.
What you do know is that Morgan had some visits with a person named Jeffrey Pagel, because you've testified about his name today, right?
Yes,
And if I go to Exhibit 2, if you have Exhibit 2, I want to draw your attention to paragraph 7, which is your note from February 19th. Did you author that?
I did.
And again, this is information that you had supplied to the court because it's being given to you by Winnebago, right?
I'm sorry. Can I correct something?
Sure.
That number 7 was authored by my lead case manager.
So some of the numbers in here are things that you wrote and some aren't?
Right, they come from case notes. That is a collaborative effort.
So, in other words, you put your name on a document that you've not entirely authored because it's a team approach.
Yes,
Okay. And on item 7, it's indicated that Jeffrey Pagel had visits with, well, I guess they used the initials JP. That's who we're talking about, right? Pagel?
yes,
Had visits with MG, that's Morgan Geyser, right?
yes,
At Winnebago 3 times.
yes,
Initially, it was reported that it was 4 visits, but in fact, it's only 3.
correct.
And every one of those visits that took place with Mr. Pagel was at Winnebago.
Yes,
There is no suggestion that Ms. Geyser ever met him in the community.
I'm not aware.
You're not aware of any of her outings that she secretly had contact with Jeff Pagel, right?
Correct.
There's no suggestion at all of that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And the 3 times that Ms. Geyser saw Pagel was inside, as you understand it, was inside Winnebago's secure facility.
To my knowledge,
So Pagel went through whatever process he would have gone through to get permission to go into the facility to see Ms. Geyser.
I suppose.
And those visits spanned 3 visits over the course of 10 days. That's the extent, isn't it?
From the records they provided us, yes.
June 3rd, June 8th, June 13th
Yes,
of 2023.
yes,
So Winnebago supplied you with those records, right?
they did.
So Jeffrey Pagel's name was known to Winnebago in June of 2023.
It was.
In fact, they were aware of the visits because that's the institution that provided you with the records, right?
Correct.
And initially, it was reported that Pagel visited her on June 30th, but then that's crossed out because that actually never happened, right?
That's what I'm told.
And in fact, it was Miss Geyser that there was a visit scheduled on June 30th with this Pagel person, and it was Miss Geyser that canceled the visit, right?
I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, but that's what I'm told.
Your report that you supplied to the court says Miss Geyser rescinded permission. That's the language you supplied to the court.
Yes,
So your understanding is that it was Miss Geyser who rescinded the ability of Pagel to visit her further.
yes,
And there's been no further visits that you're aware of from Jeffrey Pagel.
correct.
And there's been no contact with him in the community that you're aware of.
Not aware of any of that.
And as part of the release planning process, when you talk to Ms. Geyser about people she's had contact with, she brought up Pagel as a person. It was her that brought that name to your attention, right?
Correct.
It wasn't like she was hiding something and you found some notes or something in her room. She told you about Pagel.
She did.
And she asked, didn't she, to have a no contact with Pagel?
She did.
Because she still, as of the time you were meeting with her in January, was expressing a desire not to have contact with him.
Correct.
I want to ask you something totally unrelated to Morgan, because I think it's important. you've been doing this for 17 years in the mental health field, right?
Yes,
And we don't need to get into the details of other people's cases, but you are aware that Ms. Geyser's case, if you will, is of a high-profile nature, right?
yes,
We all sort of know about it because whether you've been involved in it or not, people have heard of the Slender Man case and people are just generally aware of that.
correct.
And the reason why that's important is because as part of Morgan's release planning, that's an additional variable that exists in her case that doesn't exist in everybody else's cases.
Correct.
And so thinking about that variable and talking with her about how to sort of constructively handle that is important.
Yes,
Pagel is sort of, feel free to disagree with me if you want, but Pagel is sort of a classic example of somebody who appears to be fixated, if you will, on the Slender Man case, or Morgan specifically, right?
it appears he's fixated on true crime as a whole.
When you looked at his Facebook page.
Yes,
Because you didn't talk to him, I'm sure, right?
absolutely not.
So do you know that he's a former, has law enforcement background?
I do not.
Did you know that he used to be in the correction, work in the correctional system?
I do not.
You know nothing about Pagel,
Nothing.
other than what you see on Facebook.
That's correct.
And he appears to be somebody who's fixated on, what'd you say, true crime and things like that?
Yes,
And he's the one who's selling things on the internet that he purports are from Miss Geyser.
yes,
And you don't know, there's two things that are unclear from when you look at Pagel's Facebook page. One is whether the things he says Miss Geyser sent him were even sent by Miss Geyser, right?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
When Pagel puts something on Facebook and says, here's the Slender Man letter,
Sure.
do we know as a treatment team that Miss Geyser even wrote that letter?
No, that was why we were looking into things.
Right, because any person on the internet could claim that I got this from Morgan or I got this from whoever, right? So you don't really know that the things he's saying he got from Morgan even came from Morgan, right?
She had told me that she had sent him things and she was aware that he was selling them, so we did know.
Okay. So Morgan was willing, was just discussing with you the fact that she had a letter communications and had sent him some drawings, right?
Yes, we asked her about it and she was aware.
Okay. Is there any suggestion that Morgan was trying to profit from her crime in any way?
That's unknown.
Okay. In other words, no. There's no evidence that Morgan was
Correct.
doing that, right?
Correct, yep.
Okay. And, because there's lots of things that are unknown, I just want to focus on what we do know. What we
Okay.
do know is that Pagel is posting things for sale on the internet.
Yes,
And Pagel is apparently fixated on true crime type things.
yes,
But Morgan herself hasn't had any physical contact with Pagel in over 18 months.
not that I'm aware.
And has never seen him in the community as far as we know. Right?
Correct.
And has herself asked for a no contact order.
Yes,
And as part of a treatment release, when you're planning someone's release, a person gets rules, right? It's sort of like being on probation. They have a list of rules that they have to abide by.
correct.
And certainly on those rules, oftentimes there will be no contacts with certain individuals.
Yes,
I mean, one obvious no contact would be the victim of the crime and the family members, right?
yep,
And then, so it seems like Miss Geyser's aware of that. So when she uses the phrase no contact, it's in the context of, I'd like there to be a rule that makes it clear not to have contact, right?
correct.
And in terms of making sure that somebody knows how to, well, let's go back to sort of the nature of the crime. There will be people who probably try to reach out to Morgan if they know where she is or they know how to get a hold of her because they might be obsessed with Slender Man case, right?
That's been the history.
But actually what's gonna happen, as I understand it, is judge had ordered conditional release, and so you as part of the planning group, you were gonna put together a plan for her to go to a group home, was the idea.
Correct.
And as I understand it, there were 2 group homes that were identified, but one was too expensive and one was affordable, right?
Yes, well, yes,
Two group homes that would take her, right?
yes,
And so the one that you had identified would be a location that would be confidential in a way, wouldn't it?
we were going to try to make it confidential.
Okay, I just want to explore that. I mean, the idea was even Morgan shouldn't reveal her own location to start with,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So don't and it may not be, we're not saying forever, but to begin, don't even let your mother or anybody know the exact location, right?
Correct.
Because what I think we're trying to do is make sure when she's released that these Pagel type people don't flock to a group home or start writing letters to her as she's transitioning into the community, right?
Correct.
And so in a way, as she sits here right now, anybody can write a letter to Winnebago where she is, and either Winnebago gives it to her or they don't, right?
That a yes or no?
Yes, I'm sorry.
But when she goes to the group home, the idea, your guys' idea, or the team's idea was keep the location confidential as much as possible so we can help transition Morgan into the community safely.
Correct.
And that can be hard for her to process in a way because it's almost more restrictive in a sense than Winnebago is, isn't it?
Yes.
I know she's worked hard. You would agree she's worked hard to earn her release from Winnebago, right?
Yes.
And so she has release privileges where she can go into the community in a supervised fashion and have visits from family members and friends, right?
She does.
But that's going to change when she goes to a group home. She's actually going to be more restricted to start with.
Initially, yes.
And Morgan specifically and people in general, that can be a hard thing to have to work through, the fact that they're going from having some privileges to now having almost more restriction, even though they're not in an institution.
Yes.
So things like crying and let's talk about the books. Did you ask Morgan to put together a list for you of all the books she's read? Let's pick the last year. Did you say, Morgan, give me a list of all the books you've read in the last year?
No.
You do know that she read Rent Boy, obviously, because you mentioned it, right? But the reason we know that is because Morgan brought it up as part of the release planning.
Yes.
And that's important because it's not like you found it hidden somewhere in her. It's not like Winnebago found it hidden somewhere, right?
We asked her to provide us with a list of books that she would like to read, and she had brought up that she was reading Rent Boy. She stated that she didn't want to tell the conditional release team the kind of book she was reading because she was afraid that we wouldn't allow them because they were kind of dark, I think was the way she described it.
Did you ask, so you were asking sort of prospectively, can we have a list of books that you are planning to read as you are released?
Yeah, what are you interested in reading?
Okay, but you never asked her for a list of books she's actually read, right?
No.
And in something like Rent Boy, there's no evidence that she sought it out. It appears that somebody mailed it to her at the institution, as you understand it, right?
I don't know if she sought it out or not.
Well, but you said before you believe someone mailed it to her.
That's what I'm told, yes.
Okay, so all we know is that someone mailed her this book and she read it, right?
I suppose that's what I'm told.
Yeah, we're told that someone mailed her the book.
Yes.
She read the book, and then she disclosed to you or the team that she had read the book.
Yes.
Okay, and so isn't honesty an important part of one's release plan?
It is.
Morgan should be commended. Morgan should be commended for not concealing the fact that she was reading a book that has some dark themes to it. Agree?
I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor, so I don't, from the clinical standpoint, that's not my role.
Okay, so you defer that question to the doctors who can testify about whether that's a problem.
Yes.
But it gets presented to the court and disrupts her release plan potentially because it's being represented as a problem, but you've never talked once to the doctors about it.
Correct.
Okay, and you could have, before you filed this letter from WCS that now seeks to revoke her release, you could have called any of these doctors before you filed this letter and asked them, hey, we learned that she read Rent Boy. What's your opinion? Is that a problem?
Objection, she didn't file the letter.
Okay, before you authored the letter. You could have called any of these doctors and asked them, is this a problem?
DHS contacted the treatment team at Winnebago to look further into it. So that's what they were doing.
Okay, and so the answer is you didn't do that, right?
Did I contact the doctors? No.
Now, since you read Dr. Lundbaum's, I want to ask you about Dr. Lundbaum's report. You know you've read the 3 doctor reports, right?
Yes.
And Therefore, you are aware of the fact that even back when Dr. Lundbaum authored her report in December, that it was known to the doctor, it was known to Dr. Lundbaum at least, that there are drawings, letters, and other items being sold on the internet purported to be drawn by Ms. Geyser. You were aware of that, right?
Yes,
So that's not anything new. Dr. Lundbaum knew that when she wrote the report.
yes,
And in fact, when Ms. Geyser was questioned about it, she acknowledged that she had done that, right?
yes,
Okay. And this Jeffrey Pagel person, are you also aware of the fact that Jeffrey Pagel was a known person to Dr. Lundbaum as well?
I recall that she had knowledge of him, yes.
In that Ms. Geyser had talked about how the fact that she learned on her own that this Pagel person that her letters or drawings that she had sent to him, that he was involved in trying to sell these things, she brought it to the doctor's attention back in June of 2024.
I don't recall what's stated in the report.
Now, the reason these reports are important is because when a person is released on conditional release, these reports become part of the treatment process, don't they?
They do.
And you've read the reports, but I just want to be clear, you never reached out to these doctors to discuss any of your concerns about the book or Jeffrey Pagel, right?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
So, with respect to the art that Ms. Geyser does, were you aware of the fact that Ms. Geyser has discussed her trauma therapy and the therapeutic benefit from her artwork, and the fact that a lot of it is disturbing, but helps me cope with the trauma I've been through? Are you aware of that?
That's not my role.
Okay, but we're using her artwork here, this picture that you testified to. What's the point of providing this to the court? What is the intention behind giving this to the state?
What is the intention behind giving it to the state?
Yes.
Because it raises a concern for risk.
But you never took this picture that you've now given to the state and asked Dr. Lundbaum, does this change her risk?
That's not my role.
Okay, whose role is that?
That would be the doctors that are treating her.
That would be the Winnebago doctor's role.
Winnebago, yes.
So you become aware of a drawing, and you then mention it in a revocation letter that is supplied to the court. But you were also aware of the fact that Ms. Geyser has been drawing disturbing things for a long time. And Dr. Lundbaum was aware of that when she suggested that Morgan was appropriate to be released, aren't you?
That's the report.
This is not new. Her doing a disturbing drawing is not a new fact at all. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. So we'll put that to the side. And nor is Jeffrey Pagel a new thing at all. He was known 2 years ago in June of 2023 when he was going to the institution.
To Dr. Lundbaum, yes.
Well, actually,
And
to
it
the
was
whole,
in her report.
right, and to the whole institution, because the records at Winnebago reflect the fact that he was a known visitor to their facility.
Yes.
And the records never showed anything inappropriate between Ms. Geyser and Mr. Pagel during any of those visits.
I'm
I'm going
unaware.
to object on foundation of this witness to testify about all of Winnebago's records.
Overruled. Witness can answer if she can. If she
I
doesn't
think
know, she can say she doesn't know.
I do not know.
So in addition to this one book, Rent Boy, did you ask Ms. Geyser about the other types of literature that she's interested in?
Yes.
You know that she's interested in biographies, right?
Yes.
And you know that she likes historical books, if you will. I might have said Westerns previously. She doesn't like Westerns, but historical books, right?
I am not aware.
But she's talked about her like of Vincent van Gogh, for example, and reading biographies about him, right?
Okay, yes.
And at Winnebago, she doesn't have internet access at Winnebago, right?
I'm not sure what she has access to at Winnebago.
But when you've met with her and talked to her about her hobbies, a central hobby for her is reading, right?
Yes.
It's really been, for the 11 years that she's been in custody, it's really been a crutch for her and something that she's relied on, isn't it?
I know that it's something she's interested in.
And so what Morgan has, and Morgan has an interest in a wide array of reading material. You're aware of that, right?
I'm not aware of a wide array. I know of the horror books that she's described. Some, she mentioned fantasy and the biographies.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
All right, thank you. Redirect.
Ms. Whitaker, why did you think it was important to share this information with the Department of Health Services?
It raised risk, and we needed to be aware that the treatment team was aware of these risks and that they were being addressed in treatment with Ms. Geyser.
When you say treatment team, what are you talking about?
I'm referring to the doctors and therapists at Winnebago.
Why, if you're if Ms. Geyser is getting out into the community anyway, why does it matter what is being addressed with the treatment team at Winnebago?
We take that as a foundation as we go into the community and know how to treat her into the community to mitigate risks. It's a much different, what is allowed in a confined setting is much different than what can be allowed in the community.
Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any further cross based upon the redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You could put the exhibits just up on the counter here. That would be fine. Thank you. You can step down. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Judge, at this time, I would like to call Kathleen Martinez to offer testimony on Courts Exhibits 1 and 2 as well.
All right, very good. Ms. Martinez, if you'd come forward.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
All right, thank you. Be seated. Pull up to the microphone. It's the bar with the red light. State your full name and spell your last name.
Kathleen Martinez, Martinez.
Is Kathleen with a C or a K?
K.
K, all right.
Ms. Martinez, where do you work?
Wisconsin Department of Health Services,
What's your role there?
Forensic Mental Health Section Manager.
Where's your office?
My office is 1 West Wilson in Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay. Do you work with someone named Aaron Graff, Graf?
I do. I supervise Aaron.
Okay. Were you involved in the filing that's been discussed at today's hearing regarding the petition to revoke conditional release for Morgan Geyser?
Yes.
Okay. I believe in front of you are Courts Exhibits 1 and 2. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recognize both of those items?
Yes.
Looking at Courts Exhibit 2, and just to clarify for the record, were you just in the courtroom during the testimony that was offered by Ms. Whitaker?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know Ms. Whitaker?
Yes.
Okay. Are there portions of Exhibit 2 that you authored as well?
Yes.
Could you please clarify for the court which portions you authored?
The conclusion portion of the letter, page 5, part of page 6. DHS reviewing these documents is standard practice for conditional releases, and we often make edits or final approval before filing these documents.
Okay, so how does WCS relate to DHS when we're talking about someone that's been granted conditional release?
DHS contracts with WCS to provide conditional release case management to any conditional release person in certain counties in Wisconsin,
Okay.
including the southeastern part of the state.
Okay. Does that mean that the person would only work with a WCS case manager and no one from DHS?
Upon release,
Right. Or would they have both?
DHS also contracts with Department of Corrections to provide supervision. So the individuals that are conditional release work with their WCS or the contracted case manager, the contracted DOC agent, and any other treatment providers or service providers that are indicated in the plan.
Okay. In terms of preparing a conditional release plan, is DHS involved in that?
We review it when it's complete.
Okay. Were you involved in any of the meetings that occurred in regard to the plan for Ms. Geyser?
No.
Okay. At some point in time, did you become involved in the planning for Ms. Geyser?
Yes.
Why?
I received pictures of Facebook posts that were concerning. I received them from Erin Graff that she received from WCS.
Okay. And are those some of the things that have been discussed during Ms. Whitaker's testimony and are detailed in Exhibit 2?
Yes.
Okay. Ultimately, were you able to review the information compiled by Ms. Whitaker in Exhibit 2?
Yes.
When you learned that information, what did you do?
I alerted the department administration because it is a practice to complete high-profile notifications if we believe that there may be attention or media drawn to a specific case, and that's what I did.
Okay. Did you have contact with Winnebago Mental Health Institute about some of these issues that were raised, or risk issues that were raised?
Yes, I did.
Why?
To ask them about their perspective from their, from their end.
When you approve a conditional release plan, is it important for DHS to have an understanding of what is in place with the current treatment team at the facility the person is in?
It is.
Why?
Because if somebody is making progress in treatment, we would like to continue it in the community. And when we write conditional release treatment plans, those plans should be informed by the assessed needs and risks that are done by various people in the current treatment team.
Now, would doctors who are court appointed to make evaluations about appropriateness for conditional release be the same as doctors that are in someone's treatment team in a facility?
No.
What's the difference?
The court-appointed doctors are independent examiners, not affiliated with DHS, and meet with conditional released clients or prospective conditional release clients for purposes of offering an opinion about whether the conditional release poses a threat to the individual or community or property. People at the institution treatment team would be people that interact with an individual at whatever frequency they determine is needed to address treatment concerns.
Did you try to ascertain whether information was known to the Winnebago treatment team regarding Ms. Geyser in this case?
Yes.
What specific information were you trying to learn whether they were aware of?
Had they seen the posts that I had received from around Jeffrey Pagel, including the contents of the postcard and the specific drawing? And if they knew the extent of the content of the current book, Rent Boy.
Why did you want to know that?
Because I would be interested in incorporating their opinion about what interventions would be needed to address any risk associated with those items, or perhaps they might say that they were aware and that they had no concern with it. And, you know, so since they're treating her, I was interested in understanding more about that.
Ultimately, was a decision made to file a request to this court to revoke the conditional release as opposed to finalizing and offering a plan?
Yes.
What entity's decision was that?
Department of Health Services.
Okay. And why? Why is that the position of the Department of Health Services?
Because when we asked if the treatment team were aware of the extent of these issues and the content, they said the Winnebago social worker.
I'm going to jump on hearsay grounds.
No, I'll overrule it. I'm satisfied. To some extent, it's offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but it's also offered to it's offered to show what, after receiving the information, what the witness in the department did. So I'll overrule the objection. Witness can answer.
I can answer.
Yes.
The social worker indicated that she had not told the treatment team that the specific details of the posts and the specific details of the drawing and the specific content of the current book, Rent Boy. That was in a meeting with Aaron Graff, Nicole Whitaker, and the WCS case manager were that. So to answer your question, so because the treatment team had no knowledge of these, they could not indicate whether they thought it posed a risk or they thought it was great or whatever. They couldn't answer that question because they didn't know about it.
Were there aspects of these concerns that had direct relation to the index offense that caused the department concern?
Yes.
Like what?
The material being horror related is similar to the content of the Slender Man content, and that was similar enough. The material being related to killing people and violence was similar enough to ask a question about risk.
Did the department have concerns about Ms. Geyser's self-reporting tendency to disassociate when stressed?
Yes.
What was that concern?
That in a report by Dr. Lumbaum, there was indication that Ms. Geyser was aware that she sometimes disassociates, and that was what was happening during the index offense when her environment is stressful. And releasing to the community is often includes elevated stress for the individual. And so we were interested in knowing what her treatment team thought about that in relation to her current reading material.
Was the decision to request revocation made before you checked in with her Winnebago treatment team?
No. But we would have liked more time to get more information. That's part of the problem, is that we didn't have the information we needed, and our job is to write a plan that mitigates risk to the community. It's hard to do that if the risk is unknown.
Is the information contained in Exhibit 2 that you authored still true and accurate as you sit here today, as far as you're aware?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Okay. And is the position of the department continue to be that the court revoke conditional release at this time?
At this time, yes.
And you're aware that one way the department can seek revocation is when rules are violated, right?
That's correct.
Does that apply here?
No.
Why not?
Ms. Geyser did not violate any rules of conditional release.
Right. So then why
I'm
is
aware of.
why is the department seeking revocation at this point then?
It's based on concerns about safety to the community and to Ms. Geyser.
You were in court when State's Exhibit 1 was offered, the drawing, is that true?
Yes.
Is that something that you had seen before?
Yes.
Is that something that you inquired with the Winnebago treatment team prior to filing the request to revoke?
We asked, had they received or aware of any of the posts that were done on Facebook, and they said that the Winnebago social worker indicated that the treatment team was not aware.
What about in terms of, was the treatment team aware or worked with Ms. Geyser on her tendencies to enjoy violent artwork or something like that? Was that something that was known and aware?
I believe that it was, but I don't know that for sure. But I think so, based on the reports submitted by the independent examiners. And so, yes, I
Okay.
think so.
So what aspect about the posting was concerning to the department and unaware to the treatment team?
They indicated they weren't aware of any visits. They weren't aware of the fact that he'd indicated sexual arousal based on the index offense. They were aware of the general themes, but not the details of the specific posts or drawings or the particular book.
From what you were able to review, did it appear that there was well, strike that. How do you know that this person, JP, was sexually aroused by the index offense?
I don't know that he was, but Morgan, the Wisconsin, the WCS conditional release team reported that Ms. Geyser told them that he was, and that was why she asked, part of why she asked for the no contact.
And at that point in time, she hadn't had contact with him since June of 2024, right?
It says 2023 in the records. Exhibit 2, paragraph 7.
That was the, June of 2023 is the last reported visit. I have no idea when the last contact they had was.
Okay. But from what you were able to gather, her treatment team, she never told her treatment team, hey, I'm writing letters to this person who's sexually aroused that I committed this crime 14 years ago.
Not that level of detail, but I believe they knew about him, you know, they knew his name. I asked if this was, that specifically, the sexual piece has been addressed at all in treatment, and I was told that they weren't aware of it, so.
Are there any other risk concerns that the department has that you think that the court needs to know about?
I'm going to object on notice. I'm going to object on notice grounds. If they file a petition to revoke, they can identify the grounds, which they've done, so that we have notice and can investigate and respond.
Overruled, if the witness has additional information for the benefit of the public and the court, the witness can disclose that.
I would just say that generally the conditional release program places people in the safest environment possible. However, and we have the ability to write rules for people to follow, but obviously those rules are broken, and group homes are not locked. People can leave group homes. People can cut off GPS bracelets. So we try to make the best placement possible, the safest placement possible, and we understand that we have rules, and those aren't necessarily safeguards, but I wouldn't, I guess that's just more general information about conditional release generally, not Ms. Geyser specifically.
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Cross-examination.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You and I have talked one time before, haven't we?
Yes.
I think you were on a Zoom conference that we had about a week
Yes.
or so ago, right? Right?
Yes, correct.
So I just want to ask you some questions about what you testified to.
Sure.
It doesn't sound like there was any additional concerns that you had beyond what was expressed in your filing. Do I have that correct?
Yes, I think so. Yep.
Okay. And we all know rules can be broken. You mentioned people, I think you just said people could choose to, a person could cut off their GPS bracelet, right?
Correct.
A person could theoretically leave a group home if they wanted to get out somehow, right?
Yes.
And there's mechanisms in place that when people break rules, there's mechanisms in place to address that, right?
Like, for example, pursuing revocation, or
Sure.
do you mean something?
Yeah, a person could be arrested, right?
Yes, if they were, if we could find them,
Yeah.
they could be arrested, or we could put them in, we could petition the court to, or ask the DOC to place essentially a hold on them if they were willing to come in and
Right.
go to jail or something like that.
Yep. So.
We
as
could
I-
also adjust treatment if we needed to.
Sure. And so as we sit here today, Morgan has broken 0 rules, right?
As far as I know,
Okay.
yes,
Well, I only want to know what you know, so.
Yeah,
she's
yep.
broken no rules.
yes,
All right. So, she's not facing revocation because she broke any rules.
correct,
She's now, in fact, you've never even given the judge the conditional release plan for her to go to the group home, right? You pursued
Correct.
revocation first.
correct.
Okay. And you said think I have your words correctly, the sexual piece wasn't addressed in treatment. Are those your words?
Yes,
Morgan has never expressed any sexual interest in her crime.
when I said sexual piece, I'm referring to the current reading material of being sexual sadism, plus her interactions with him around being interested, sexually gratified or aroused by her crime, exploring that in therapy to see whether or not that presents a risk to the community. That's what I meant.
Okay, what I heard you say before was that Morgan broke off contact with Pagel when she found out that he was sexually interested in her crime. That's what I heard you say 5 minutes ago. Right?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so Morgan,
She rescinded his ability to visit her in person.
right, which is what you would want a person to do in her shoes.
Absolutely.
She finds out that the guy is creepy, he has sexual interest in her crime, she cuts off contact.
Revocation is not about punishment or saying.
I'm not asking about.
I mean, so.
First, ma'am.
Sure.
I just want to ask you very specific questions.
Okay, sorry.
What you want someone in Morgan's shoes to do is if someone reaches out to her and starts expressing sexual interest in her crime, you want her to cut off contact with that person.
Yes,
That is what she did. Correct?
correct.
In June of 2023. Right?
June of 2024.
No, June of 2023.
She rescinded the release on June of 2024.
Right, but the last time she had contact with him at the institution was June of 2023.
It was 24 that I rescinded it for
Right.
that reason. For that reason in June 24.
Oh, she became aware of it in June of 2024 and then rescinded the contact, right?
I don't know that.
Okay, all we know is that she rescinded it in June of 2024, right?
Correct.
But we know for sure that the last time she had any contact with him in the facility was June of 2023, right?
The last visit he came to Winnebago was in June of 2023.
Okay. Now, have you ever yourself met with Morgan?
No,
Okay. And you are what is your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in social work.
Okay, so you're a LCSW.
APSW, Advanced Practice Social Worker.
So you're a social worker by training, right?
Yes,
And you talked before about Dr. Lundbaum's report, so I'm assuming you yourself have read the doctor reports that were filed about Ms. Geyser, right?
correct.
Because that's an important part of your job, is to read those reports and know what the doctors are aware of, right?
It's not part of my job, but I did in this case.
Okay, why'd you do it in this case?
In order to understand the situation better.
Because of the high-profile nature of it?
No, because of the concern brought to me by the team.
Okay, so with respect to Ms. Geyser's artwork, you're aware of the fact, aren't you, that Dr. Lundbaum that Winnebago itself was aware that Morgan has, part of her therapy is her artwork. You know that, right?
Yes,
In that it's been a method that they've used to help her cope with her trauma, right?
yes,
In that, in fact, it's been known for quite some time, it was known even to Dr. Lundbaum, that the artwork is disturbing. That's not new information.
no,
And Dr. Lundbaum, despite that, and knowing that,
Well, that was a double negative.
okay, then let me be precise with it. I think I should ask the question. You know that Ms. Geyser has drawn artwork of a disturbing nature in the past, right? You know that?
I read that, yes,
Okay, you read that in Dr. Lundbaum's report?
yes.
Okay. Now, with respect to the book, Rent Boy, are you aware of how Ms. Geyser got that book?
I was told that it was mailed to her,
Is that all you know?
yes,
Okay, someone mailed it to her.
yes,
And the reason you know about it is because she said that she read it, right?
yes.
She brought it up. It wasn't like it was discovered. Right?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know. Ms. Geyser stated she just finished a book titled Rent Boy by Gary, Indiana, which she stated was about prostitution and black market organ trading. Are you aware of that sentence in the WCS report?
Yes,
Okay, so Ms. Geyser was the one who disclosed that she read the book.
yes,
Don't we want, as part of DHS, don't you want honesty?
yes,
So it would be a concern if somebody wasn't honest about reading a book like that, but
yes.
it's also a concern when they are honest about it.
If the concern was that upon further investigation and looking into the themes of the book, when they asked her about it, her response was, "Oh, I forgot that part," which is also indicated in the memo.
She stated that it was darker and disturbing, right?
I mean, I wasn't in that meeting.
Okay. And really, you don't have any personal familiarity with Ms. Geyser as an individual because you've never met her, right?
Correct.
And when you talked before about the sexual piece that wasn't addressed in treatment, what we're talking about is Jeffrey Pagel, whoever that is, his sexual interest in whatever, right?
And sexual sadism, the combination of that.
That he's interested in sexual sadism and,
No, the book related, the Rent Boy book had themes of sexual sadism.
right. So
So-
the concern is, as I understand it, the concern is one book that she read, one book in 11 years, one book,
Okay,
had some themes of sexual sadism.
okay,
That's a concern, right?
yes,
And then there's another concern that someone named Jeffrey Pagel is sexually interested in her crime. That's another concern, right?
the concern is the combination of that.
Right.
And whether or not the treatment team has addressed that and what they think about it. The concern is a question of risk. It's not a determination of risk.
What is there to address about Jeffrey Pagel's sexual desire over a crime that happened? What can Morgan do about Jeffrey Pagel's problems? Other than contact?
I do not believe Morgan has any responsibility to address Jeffrey Pagel's concerns.
Okay, so all the stuff he's posting on the internet about his own behavior, that has nothing to do with Morgan, right?
I don't agree with that because the content of what is posting does have to do with Morgan, but that he's posting is not Morgan's fault or
Okay.
responsibility.
Right. And what would be your role, ma'am, in Morgan's future when she goes to the group home? Do you play a role in her life, or would you play a role in her life?
I oversee the forensic specialists that work at the Department of Health Services that oversee the contract for conditional release, case management and supervision.
So when a person is, in other
So-
words,
Go ahead, sorry.
so when a person is released to a group home and they have their rules, if they violate the rules, then you oversee the treatment providers who would address that. Is that what you're saying?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. So really, you would play no role in Ms. Geyser's life going forward. You wouldn't be involved in treatment or anything.
Very rarely would I be involved in any conditional release person's day-to-day life.
Did you ever ask Ms. Geyser to provide you with a list of books she's read over the last year?
No.
To see what topics, no? Did you ever reach out to this Pagel person to ask him any questions of her?
No.
And you did say before that the treatment team did know about him. You're aware of that, right?
They knew his name. They indicated they did not know about the visits or any other details.
Yeah, so the visits at the facility, right?
Do you have an answer?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
And between the time that the judge ordered, so you're a part of DHS, right?
Yes.
And so it was actually your job to make sure that a conditional release plan gets filed with the court for the judge to either approve or not approve, right?
Personally?
Yeah.
No.
You're not involved in the drafting of that report? Or
No,
that plan, I should say?
correct, no. I mean, yes, you are correct that I am not involved directly in the drafting of that plan.
And Morgan, between the time that judge ordered that plan to be drafted and now, she hasn't done anything violent, right?
No,
And neither to herself or others, right?
I think that's true. I believe Winnebago would have reported that.
Right, if she was doing something violent to
Right.
herself or others, you'd know about that.
I think so.
And before you put together, when Ms. Nicolai was questioning you about Exhibit 2 that you have in front of you, you are the one who wrote the conclusion section, was that your testimony?
Yes,
So starting with conclusion and recommendation, did you write all that?
I did.
And you say that Ms. Geyser only provided the information about the book when prompted, but that's because she was asked about it, right? The specific question was asked what she's read recently, and she brought up Rent Book. Is that right?
That is, refers to the.
Rent Boy.
Right, that refers to the detail of the detail of the content of the themes of Rent Boy. But Morgan did bring up the book name itself. That's how WCS knew to Google the contents of it.
Right. And you said in your conclusions that reading horror and murder-related books is not by itself necessarily a risk to the community.
Yes, I did write that.
And you feel that there wasn't full disclosure of the book, is that or the contents of the book, right?
Correct.
That's what that comes down to.
That's true. Sorry, can you repeat that question?
You're concerned that there was, in your opinion, a lack of full disclosure about
Oh,
the
yes.
contents of that book, right?
Yes,
There's no other book she's read that you're raising today as a red flag for the court, right?
correct.
That's the one.
That's an example, yeah.
Well, that's the only one you're aware of that's a concern. Right?
The concern is about, I'm talking about that specific book, so yes.
Okay. You mentioned that in your conclusions that living in the community through conditional release, there is inherently less structure and supervision when compared to a state mental facility, meaning she theoretically has more freedom to leave if she wanted to, right?
Exactly.
And Morgan hasn't tried to escape from Winnebago that you're aware of, right?
No,
And you say that group homes are not locked, typically not staffed by individuals who understand complex mental health problems, and even with GPS, could not guarantee prevention from absconding, right?
correct,
That's true for everybody. That's nothing unique to Morgan.
correct,
And that somebody could form a bad relationship that would exacerbate a risk, that's not unique to Morgan. That's anybody.
true.
And that's just something we have to deal with, isn't it? That's part of the nature of somebody going into conditional release, is that it is a gradual process to give that person more freedom, and there will be potentially more things that could happen, right?
That is true. The recommendation was to monitor social contact, social relationships from one of the independent evaluators. So so we monitor different things depending on individual needs and risks.
And treatment doesn't stop for a person once they're released from the Winnebago Institute.
No, it doesn't.
In fact, it might change because that person now has a different set of challenges that they have
Yes.
to confront, right?
Yep.
And so, part of the job at DHS is just making sure that as part of the contract, if you will, is to make sure that those treatment providers are in place and available to the released person, right?
Yes,
And treatment remains something that, if there's a concern about a book, for example, a rule can be put in place that a person not read a particular type of book, right?
a rule could be put in place, that's true.
And then if a person violates that rule, then, as you know, petition to revoke gets filed with the court, right?
Yes,
So if we,
well, possibly,
right, it doesn't have to result in revocation. You could choose to do some alternative approach.
if we found out about it, yes.
Right. So, and so the way you work through things is to establish rules, right? Rules get established for a person when they're released.
Yes,
And in this case, no rules have even been really, other than the ones that exist at Winnebago, there's really been no set of rules that's been provided to Morgan to say, here's what you can read and here's what you can't read, right?
I don't know that.
Well,
I have no idea actually of that.
well, you said before she's not here because she violated any rule. We already established that, right?
Yes, that's true.
Meaning-
Because there's a standard set of rules.
Right, meaning there's no rule that prohibits her from reading Rent Boy, for
Right,
example.
yes,
There's no rule that prohibits any type of reading against her.
right, yes, correct.
She discloses what she's read as part of the release plan, and she gets served with revocation papers. Do I have that right?
Objection argumentative.
No, that's,
No, overruled. It's cross-examination.
right? That's what happened. She has no rule prohibiting her from reading any genre at all, right?
Correct,
She then reads Rent Boy, that's what sends her, and discloses it, right?
correct.
And then she's served with revocation paperwork and told she won't be released for 6 months. That's how it
The
was handled.
revocation is not based on rule violation,
Based on
safety concerns.
safety concerns over something she read that wasn't prohibited.
Yes,
Okay, that's all.
Any redirect?
You were asked a lot of questions just now about why the petition to revoke was filed. And those questions seem to suggest the only reason was because of one book that Ms. Geyser read. Is that true?
yes.
That's the only reason that this
Oh,
was
sorry.
filed?
Sorry, go ahead.
Is that the singular only reason that she said, I read this book, and so you said, I'm gonna file this petition?
Oh, no,
Okay.
no.
Is it fair to say that it's a much more complex analysis that was done before the determination to file this was made?
Yes,
The discussion that was had regarding this Mr. Pagel person, you agreed with defense counsel that he certainly seems to have some issues, right? And that they're not Ms. Geyser's problem.
that she shouldn't be punished for,
Right.
or responsible for dealing with his issues.
Right. But there's still a concern that the department has because this is a person that Ms. Geyser decided to have a relationship with for some period of time, right?
That's true, but I would say the crux of the concern is that her current treatment team was not aware of the extent of their relationship, the extent of the content of the post. It's that they might have been aware on some level that he exists, but they weren't aware of the detail, the same with the book. They weren't aware of the extent of the details of the book. And that without their perspective on what that looks like in terms of risk mitigation or treatment intervention, we had no choice other than to file a petition for revocation because we cannot write a treatment plan that addresses risks that we're not aware of, that we've asked about, and the treatment team said, well, we haven't addressed it because we were not made aware of this level of detail.
And when you talk about level of detail specifically with this Pagel person, did the detail include the fact that some of the content of correspondence Ms. Geyser sent to him?
Yes,
What specifically?
the postcard that indicated a desire to be intimate with him.
Was that information that the Winnebago treatment team had?
No.
Do you think that it's a distinction for the treatment team to be aware of someone's name versus to be aware of a fact like that?
Yes.
Why?
Details that around the specific details around the nature of their relationship could exacerbate risks to the community and I think it would be important for them to have explored that in order to indicate what current interventions are in place and how we might be able to address that in the community.
If, if the department became aware that there was someone out there in the world who seemed to be fixated on Ms. Geyser and was sending her things and wanted to come see her, but there was no evidence that she ever reciprocated any communication, would the department have filed revocation papers?
Probably not.
Again, there are some things inherent about this case that are going to be outside of Ms. Geyser's control, right?
Yes.
Are those aspects the reason that the department has filed the motion to revoke here?
This has been asked and answered numerous times about why they filed their petition.
No, overruled.
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
These aspects of things that are outside of Ms. Geyser's control, just based on the nature of this case, are those the reasons that the department has concerns about risk in this matter?
No.
Okay. Are the concerns about risk specific to Ms. Geyser's actions and behaviors?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Further cross.
You said a postcard that Miss Geyser wrote Pagel, where she expressed a desire to be intimate with him, right?
Yes.
One postcard, right?
You're asking, sorry, what is your question?
You're aware of one postcard, one time,
One postcard, yes.
where she wrote someone who had visited her and said she wanted to be intimate with him.
Yes.
She's an adult woman, right?
Yes.
Wanting to be intimate with someone is not a risk factor, ma'am.
Wanting to be intimate with someone who is sexually aroused by an index offense may be, and that is the question that I had to the treatment team.
And there's no evidence that when she wrote him that postcard saying she wanted to be intimate, that she was aware that he was aroused by the index offense. Agreed? There's no evidence of that. Agreed?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you. And it was Miss Geyser who cut off contact with Jeffrey Pagel, not the other way around.
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
You can't write a treatment plan to control for risks we are unaware of. That's what you said?
Yes.
You can, if to be clear, you can put any, in theory, you can put any rule in place you want. If you want to prohibit Morgan from having contact with someone, that can be a specific rule that gets put into her plan, isn't it?
The treatment plan indicates treatment interventions and is distinct from the rules of supervision for conditional release.
Okay, but it's already, but,
But yes, we can
Right.
put any rule we want, I guess.
and,
It would be subject to review by the court, but yes,
right, because she doesn't get released until the judge reviews the plan, right?
correct.
So, okay, so when you said treatment plan, you weren't talking about a conditional release plan. That's a separate thing.
The conditional release plan does not indicate the rules of conditional release supervision, but it indicates treatment interventions and also placement, location of placement and that kind of thing.
Got it. Those are all my questions.
Any further direct?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Have a good day. Thank you.